make $20,000 a month.
Yeah.
And without even trying too hard, Jason, they were making $30,000 after our first visit. The first night, it was a cold night in February, we had 7 envelopes throughout the whole system between Washington and Boston.
7 envelopes.
And that was probably the most painful night. The first night was the worst. I think the next night we may have had 20, and then it kind of grew from there.
I love niches because I believe there's riches and niches. Most people just have to find that niche where you can, where you're maybe not competing against so many different players and you can hold the margin a little bit better. Yeah.
And this is high margin work for us. I can understand if Panera Bread's having a special for the lobster rolls for the month of July and it's June 30th and the lobster's not there, I can understand that account is at risks. They count on us when they're really in need. And someone got sick, I think it was a fatality.
Oh, wow.
So the corporate edict was no food leaves this facility unless it's a refrigerator or frozen truck. This is Mike Gualtieri, founder, CEO of Pro Courier, Inc., and you're watching the Last to First podcast.
In the last mile world, we value technology that looks good but doesn't get the job done. That's why different is different. Built by courier pros with over 35 years of real-world operational experience. Sorting freight, dispatching drivers, missed scans. They built the technology platform that they always needed. You get lightning-fast dispatching and routing, a driver app that eliminates confusion and adds visibility. Back office automation and tools from on-demand to air freight, all in one place. Need proof? Their courier business grew 300% in just 3 weeks without any new hires and managing 150 drivers. Ready for tech that gets it? Visit deliveredifferent.com and book your demo today. All right, welcome back to our next episode in the Last to First podcast, where we bring you the latest, the greatest. We talk about why the final mile delivery industry is moving from last to now first in today's supply chain. Joining me today is a great friend of mine. He is a past president of the CLDA. He is a Hall of Famer. He is better known as Mikey, but also the founder and CEO of Pro Courier, Mike Gualtieri. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason.
Give me some love here.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's good to be with you. So I got to start off with a quick story. I love stories. I'm 26 years old. I think it may have been a year back in my family's delivery business. And I'm in the office, and phone rings, and it says, yep, Mike Gualtieri on the phone for you. I'm like, Mike Gualtieri? Who the hell is that? I heard your name before, but you never called me. And I picked the phone up, and you kind of reintroduce yourself to me. And you say, hey, I'm representing the CLDA board, and we're calling for nominations, and we'd like to have you consider yourself for running for the board. I looked at the phone like, this guy must be crazy. I've only been doing this like a year. But you convinced me on that phone call that I should put my name in the hat, and I did, and the rest is history. But you saw something in me before I did, so I just want to first thank you for that moment 15 years ago that has kind of brought us here, full circle moment.
Yeah, I think at that time we were concerned that many of the board members were getting on in years, and we were looking for young, talented people, and you distinguished yourself in the short time that we knew each other as being one of the next generation of leadership. So I'm happy you accepted, and the association's glad that you ran. You did a great job as president.
I appreciate that. So we are sitting here, we're in studio. I've been trying to get you in here for a while, so I'm glad to finally have you. You are someone that I think a lot of people look up to for many different reasons, and we're going to cover some of those today. But let's first just get into Pro Courier, just so the audience can understand what you do today. Where is Pro Courier located? What state you operate in? Give us some stats on the company.
We currently have offices outside of Boston and in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
We have drivers located throughout southern New England, even down into New York State and Philadelphia, New Jersey, tri-state area, I would say. And we're probably a 50-50 split of scheduled same-day delivery as well as on demand, beyond the challenge every day, because we never know who we need or where we need or what size vehicle. But we've always tried to keep a nice split for the ground services, but we also have some related same-day emergency deliveries that involve refrigerated trucks. We've spoken about, we had added an overnight by 9 a.m. delivery, which we've kind of backed off from. And there's the next flight out product, which emergency delivery of time-critical parts, generally within 4 to 6 hours of a request. so using the commercial airlines.
I want to get into some of those because I think some I've done, I haven't. But first, tell me, why'd you stop the overnight by 9 a.m.? What happened
So
there?
this is a COVID story, and there's lots of good and bad ones. But I think in this case, it was good for us. We had worked hard on developing an overnight by 9 a.m. product between Boston and New York City, including Hartford. A lot of the users were large law firms that had multiple offices and were getting case files and other things back and forth. It was a growing segment of our business, but I remember that day, and we all do, that in March where COVID hit, we first of all know we were going out of business as a business. We didn't know whether we'd be around. But one thing that happened almost immediately is because everyone was working at home, the need to get from a large law firm in Boston to their New York office and back dried up almost immediately. So we said we backed off of it. We notified the firms involved. It wasn't huge. It wasn't our business, probably less than 10%, but very taxing from a time point of view. When you're running line hauls between New York City and Boston, your day is a 24-hour day. So the associated headaches that come up with vehicle breakdowns, weather, and with the product being so time critical that we had promised 9 a.m. delivery, we at that time didn't have a choice. We felt like it was made for us, but we suspended the service and then got busy through COVID with delivering tests that we had never anticipated to testing stations in New Jersey and Massachusetts. We hardly had the capacity to cover all the new work that came. And when it all shook out, we get the revenue and the slim profit margins with the overnight, and we said, you know what, I think we can continue to grow and not add the overnight product.
The juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
It was not.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point, because sometimes owners or leaders they don't often know how to say no or back away from something when it's not working. It's like you overcommit to something, you're married to it forever.
Right.
But the reality is, a lot of when you say no, whether it be to a customer or some new service, it can sometimes open you up for other opportunities that you may not be able to see because you're so kind of head down into whatever that's tying you up.
Yes, that's precisely the case. Decision was kind of made for us by the client base that we had at the time, but it kind of worked out for the best because it allowed us to that huge opportunity we had with COVID testing and related things.
Yeah. Talking about COVID, 'cause I know we did some work together. I was with the company I was with Pro Courier during COVID.
Yes.
What did you see from a business perspective? Obviously, there's a lot of growth in our industry. Has all of that business pretty much gone away now?
The testing part of it has gone away. Where we were picking up at, it started out with public testing sites that were popping up everywhere. Mm-hmm. They were using public facilities like entertainment venues, et cetera. And they would schedule, as an example, a nightly pickup in Stamford, Connecticut, Bridgeport, Connecticut, New Haven, and Middletown, Connecticut, Hartford, West Hartford, and up to Cambridge, Mass. Everything went to Cambridge.
I want to thank you for taking this ride on the Last of First journey with us. In 6 months, we've achieved over 200,000 views across all our platforms. We're humbled and thankful for your support. But I do have one small favor to ask. Take 5 seconds, hit the like button or subscribe. Just like your on-time performance metric, this one matters to us the most. It helps us attract better guests and bring you deeper content to help propel you on your Last of First journey. And if your brand aligns with our mission, reach out to us. We'd love to find ways to partner and work together. Now back to Last of First.
And it was easy work in the sense that it was at the same time every day, and there was nothing large about the tests, so it didn't require specialty vehicles. It was a blessing in disguise. We going to be our salvation. We knew it would go away. Probably stayed about a year longer. Mm-hmm. The work that you were using us for involved CVS pharmacies, right, and lock boxes, et cetera, and for which I'm very grateful for the opportunity. By the way, I don't say thank you enough.
No.
And we kind of knew it had a shelf life.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we didn't want to change the way we operate or double our office operations staff as a result of it. But I think the nature of the work, we put the time in up front to manage the nuances, and then it was pretty much the same drivers every day.
Yeah.
Doing a very good job.
Yeah.
So we were very fortunate.
Yeah, that was kind of set it and forget it, but work almost. You kind of set it up, and forget about it. But from a dispatch standpoint, it's not overly intensive. Drivers can pick up, do their kind of drops.
Right.
Drop and pop is what I like to call it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep.
And we had run backed up with one knowledgeable driver that knew all the nuances, and we kind of worked them into the scheduled runs every week or two, keep them fresh. But it is set it and forget it. You're right.
Last question on Pro Courier services. You mentioned refrigerated trucking. What do you do from that standpoint? What are you doing, and who do you do it for?
We have one client with several divisions. Cisco, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Now we're not in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but we had a sales rep. So they do. I think Cisco manages institutions like Tulane and Boston University, and they provide the food.
Right.
Sigma is a division of theirs that tends to go to well-known restaurant chains, so Panera Bread, et cetera. They deliver 99% of the deliveries with their own trucks. 2 drivers, require refrigerated and freezer capability. In the old days, we had a gentleman, Mark Pletcher, who drove to West Hartford, Connecticut, showed up at our door and said, listen, I need help. He was a sales rep and still is, a very successful guy, who said, I need to get 1 case of these steaks to every Texas Roadhouse in New England and upstate New York. So the only way we had 5 or 6 drivers on routes going to Portland, Maine, and Burlington, Vermont, and Rochester, New York, and Syracuse. So we did it, and it worked out well for him. So he was driving the product up from Harrisburg to our facility, and we had drivers waiting to skedaddle from there. I guess the company had litigation that defective food in another part of the country, not involving him or us, was delivered and someone got sick. I think it was a fatality. Oh, wow. So the corporate edict was no food leaves this facility unless it's a refrigerated or frozen truck. So that changed the ball game because we weren't in the refrigerated business, but
you got in.
We love these deliveries, Jason.
Yeah.
And so we, like anything else, we started searching for this very specialized equipment, and it's not easy. Yeah. Without any promises of weekly revenue, and we were successful, and we have been successful with them. Their drivers may run out of hours, and they need just 1 or 2 final deliveries, so they may call us to pick up in the Boston area to continue on. Yeah. Most frequently, we're picking up with a refrigerated vehicle at their facility in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
And we deliver to Virginia and as far north as Maine for them.
Yeah. I love that. I did some reefer truck work. I know we may have talked about it a little bit in the past, but I love niches because I believe there's riches and niches.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and most people just have to find that niche where you can, where you're maybe not competing against so many different players, and you can hold the margin a little bit better. Yeah.
And this is high margin work for us. I can understand if Panera Bread's having a special for the lobster rolls for the month of July, and it's June 30th, and the lobster's not there. I can understand that account is at risk. So I like where we are. They count on us when they're really in need. We may not hear from for 2 or 3 weeks.
Got it. So. All right, so let's roll the clock back. All right, I want to go back to your origin story. I want to understand how you got to where you are today. Take me back to 1980. You were a sales rep. I think you were just out of college, just starting off in the industry.
Right.
Talk about your early part of your career. Kind of how'd you get into this final mile courier space?
In Boston University with a degree in broadcast journalism. I thought that's what I was going to do. Yeah. I can remember interviewing for on-air jobs in Plattsburgh, New York, and Burlington, Vermont, and Providence, Rhode Island, which is probably too big of a market for me just out of school. And in the meantime, I was bartending in Boston with my freshly minted college degree. And a friend from BU approached me, said, listen, he'd been selling for the last year for a company called Sky Courier Network, owned by Gil Carpel, and they're based in Northern Virginia. And he said, we're at a point now where I can't handle it all, and we need a second sales rep. What do you think of the idea? But I hadn't considered anything outside of broadcast journalism at that point. Mm-hmm. But I thought that I could be somewhat adaptable and learn it. Mm-hmm. And I accepted the position, which was based in downtown Boston, 31 State Street, and very much selling to law firms, pushing paper, all next flight out work. The company did a lot of next flight out delivery work.
Explain next flight out for the audience who may not be familiar with the term.
So it's when companies or firms or printing firms need something that's quicker than overnight going a distance. So we would utilize the passenger airlines. The rules were a little bit looser back then. We used to go up to the ticket counter. There were things that happened that don't happen now. But it was mostly printed matter, not so much parts. It was parts once in a while. Generally, delivery within 4 to 6 hours throughout the country, and it was a premium service. They operated throughout the country, had sales reps in Chicago and L.A. and Houston, and we were in Boston, where there was a lot of work in the Northeast Corridor from to Washington, Boston to New York. And a lot of the clients were financial printers who, they may not exist now. And the legal community, which it seems like a lot of the filings are done electronically, so I just don't know how the paper part of that business worked, but it was what we were targeting and going after.
Later, I want to get into your sales technique and process, but at that time, 1980, there's hardly any technology at your fingertips.
Right.
What was your technique back then? Was it just knock on doors and a quick intro? Did you do anything unique at that time?
Yeah, it was a struggle for me to. I thought that show up in a mailroom and slap people on the back and give them a pizza once in a while and you'd get business. And I quickly found out that it's not that easy.
Yeah,
not only in our industry, but in every industry. So I was kind of lacking the discipline and technique. I had the desire, and I loved the industry almost from the beginning. But I needed to. It was a little bit painful. I needed to kind of educate myself. Questions, ask the right questions, not make statements, but listen to what the problem is with a client and try to come up with a solution.
Yeah. And
saying no was sometimes on the table, which is very difficult for all of us. But I think it ultimately adds to credibility.
Got it. And then you migrated from Sky Courier to Connection a few years later. What'd you do at that company?
So Jim Berluti, the person who's a very sales individual, had been working on a business plan with some co-workers from Sky Courier to start this regional overnight company called Eastern Connection. So I had the benefit, I was so fortunate to be with talented people, but that service was overnight by 9 a.m. between Washington, D.C. and Boston, with the hub being New York City.
Okay.
So he asked me to start up the effort in Connecticut. And the trucks were going right through Connecticut on their way to New York City anyway, so they probably looked at it as anything they could get originating from Hartford, New Haven, Stanford was gravy. And probably a little bit, it was nice. It was a nice surprise for the company because they hadn't anticipated anything coming out of Connecticut. And me to join, I did not have equity, but probably the best education, more useful than anything in college. Learned a lot of things about what to do and what not to do that I've incorporated even to this day in the businesses I've been involved in.
Yeah. When you're building an overnight network, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, one of the things I think is most difficult about that is you've got to have enough volume and density to start making the math work. But when you first start off, obviously you're kind of bleeding a little bit, right? In your experience, or at least in that experience, how long did it take for Eastern Connection to kind of to a place of profitability, or where they were at least not bleeding as they were establishing these networks?
Pretty talented sales and owners in that organization, but I think the business plan had it at about 1.5 years to get to break even.
Yep.
And as I recall, it was not a year. It was probably 7 months before it was profitable. So the first night, it was a cold night in February, we had 7 envelopes throughout the whole system between Washington and Boston.
7 envelopes.
And that was probably the most painful night, first.
Was it on a straight truck?
We were at that time we were running cargo vans.
Okay.
It
The
eventually
overkill.
got to straight truck, but the first night was the worst. I think the next night we may have had 20, and then it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but they were $15, $20 overnight envelopes. So
Yeah.
it takes a lot to get to break even. But fortunately, there was a lot coming out of Washington, a lot, Jim, in Boston, and surprisingly also out of Connecticut. So
Yeah, yeah. So then, about 5 years after you join Eastern Connection, you get the courage to leave and start your own entity.
right.
Before you tell, what was the mindset? That's what I want to understand as to why you wanted to leave. Sounds like it was a good situation happening at Eastern Connection. What made you leave to start your first venture?
It was a lot of fun. The company had grown, Eastern Connection had grown quite a bit, probably to $25 million.
Wow.
I felt like I was in control a little bit of things, at $5 million.
Story time with drop off. The lab test that just couldn't wait. A hospital system needed a delivery fast. The patient was prepped, the doctors were waiting, and time was just not on their side. Enter drop off. Drop off showed up with the certified driver, temperature controlled equipment, and live updates along the way. That wasn't just moving a package, it was saving a life. And that's the type of reliability that drop off brings in 35 plus markets across the US. Powered by smart technology, but always with people and drivers who care. Turn this story into your reality. Visit dropoff.com today.
But then it kind of exploded, and a lot of new faces came on the scene, and I had an opportunity with a lot of these people that I had established relationships with that needed the next level of urgency. We got more and more requests for same-day delivery, but our model at Eastern Connection was overnight by 9 a.m. So it seems like the opportunity just fell in my lap. And
So you guys weren't doing any same day at Eastern Connection, or very limited?
very limited.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that it just was, when the bells go off so many times, it is one thing, but I thought it was an opportunity to get into a non-competitive environment and have ownership, which was mine for a long time.
Yeah.
So I had one partner who didn't know the industry at all, a childhood friend, who was the accountant and the inside guy. Didn't want to see customers, but it was a great marriage because my skill and preference was to sell,
Yeah.
and his was to do the numbers, and it worked out very well.
Did you have to secure outside capital when you were starting the venture?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
I had joined club in downtown Hartford. Because when I moved there, I didn't know anyone, So it was a club called the University Club, and I had been going to regularly there just to socialize and to meet with people. And we also had educational forums. It's where I met Andrea Obston.
Oh, okay.
Many accountants, lawyers. So it's like, and the banker was there. So I really never left the University Club, utilizing Andrea, utilizing Pete Marwick at the time when they existed, and my relationship with Don Droppo. And the banker was Mechanic Savings Bank, was a tiny little Hartford-based business. And it made the process a little bit easier. We were able to work at night and on weekends with the business plan first, and drill that down. We put a lot of time into the business plan, and I learned a lot with that process. And the banker kind of knew us. He read the plan. We didn't have to go to 3 or 4 or 5 banks. The first bank we went to was Mechanics and Gary Hans. So it kind of helped out.
Yeah.
We personally signing for all the guarantees is a little bit
It's
unnerving.
It's nerve-wracking, eh?
It's also the reason why I think we beat the business plan to profitability as well. I think it took us 9 months
Wow.
of losses
So
before
talk about, that business was called Connecticut Courier.
Connecticut Courier.
Right. And so you had one partner. So talk about, is it similar to kind of what you do today with Pro Courier? Was it a different model?
It's the exact same business.
Okay.
We incorporated all the businesses. It was day by ground primarily.
Okay.
We had a next flight out component. It was very low volume.
Were the drivers employed drivers or IC drivers back then?
They were all independent contractor drivers.
Okay. So you've always operated with an IC model.
We had, as we do now, token cargo vans in each city. So in Stamford, New Haven, and Hartford, our world was just Connecticut. We had that just for presence. and back up a little bit. The vehicle's not as large as we anticipated, so we had a van, if needed. But mostly advertising. It's probably 30% more than the independent contractor model. But people say, I see your vans all over town. Well, they're seeing the same van across town every day.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to ruin their delusion.
The perception, yeah. I had the same thing. We intentionally never put numbers on the back of the van because we didn't want anybody to know it's the same van you guys went around the city.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, they take the numbers off.
So we currently do that as well, but I think that it doesn't work in terms of efficiency, and self-employed drivers have a vested interest in doing it right, but doing it in a timely manner. And that doesn't mean speeding on the highway. Most time is lost off the road, and it's with the little things that add up. 5 minutes here, 10 times a day adds up to an hour. So there's no question we couldn't operate without the independent contractor model.
Yeah. So you have success with Connecticut Courier, but I know ultimately you did exit and you sold that business to U.S. Delivery Systems.
Right.
Talk about that experience, because I know what I understand about U.S. Delivery System, it was one of the first roll-ups of courier companies in the country, and it obviously went public. Do you remember how they approached you? What was the kind of the value prop that made you want to exit? And I guess, were you looking to exit that time, or did it kind of just someone come at you from left field?
We were fortunate in the old metric of Inc. magazine. They used to have the Inc. 500 before they had the Inc. 5000. We had pretty explosive growth. I recall the first year we were eligible, we were like number 104 on the Inc. 500.
Wow.
So we became kind of a known local entity through the associated publicity, et cetera. And three things coming together. My relationship with CLDA, which was MCA at the time, and attending those meetings regularly. The notoriety from the Inc. 500 award. And U.S. Delivery was looking for quality businesses in those first couple of rounds of acquisitions. And they also were looking to put dots on the map. So little did we know, and we weren't, the Stamford, Connecticut, and New Haven offices were really drop points for our overnight drivers. Yeah. It was all functioning out of Hartford. Right. But we gave them 3 dots on the map, which I later found out it's just as important as the revenue. Yeah. But we were fortunately profitable and answering to Wall Street and quarterly earnings calls. That was a big thing for U.S. Delivery. Yeah.
What was your role with once you sold the business? You stayed on at Delivery, I'm assuming.
Stayed on, and they kept 5 of us, former owners, to run the New England division, the Northeast division from New York City, not including New York City, but
got it.
So it was maintaining operations. It was assisting with acquisition. Okay. They bought I remember getting a phone call from Gary Grant at the time saying, "Yeah, we're closing on the acquisition of a business in Bangor, Maine. And we've decided that you and Rick are going to run it for us." So.
We've all heard the saying before, trust but verify. But in the last mile, when you're working with agents and master contractors, verification is manual, complex, and very rarely achieved. Enter GigSafe. GigSafe solved the problem that matters to you most. They've built a new network compliance tool that ties in master contractors, agents, and carriers so they can connect, validate, and authenticate their delivery and driver networks. With automated onboarding, live compliance tracking, and insurance verification, all happening in real time. No spreadsheets, no follow-ups, no more hoping that my partners are doing it right. Just one connected platform where visibility and control are at every layer of your operation. Turn your compliance into your competitive advantage. Visit gigsafe.com today.
I was happy to do it. Yeah. Happy to assist in any way, and we kind of jumped into it. Getting to Bangor, Maine from anywhere isn't easy. It was a 9-hour drive or so, but we it's a scheduled delivery company going to the far reaches of North Maine. I don't think we were received with open arms. It was owner for years and years, and things were done the same way. Really, without what Clayton Trier said is he was the CEO of U.S. Delivery. So listen, they make $20,000 a month, Mike. As long as they make $20,000 a month, we don't care about the details. So you couldn't help but go up and find the inefficiencies on our first visit.
Yeah.
And without even trying too hard, Jason,
Yeah.
they were making $30,000 after our first visit. We consolidated duplicate routes.
Yeah, yeah.
So that didn't add to our popularity with the guys in it. But
I would imagine that.
it was a nice surprise for U.S. delivery. It was a small acquisition.
Yeah.
But it assisted in getting more dots on the map.
Yeah.
And that company was 3 more dots.
Last question: how was it working with? I gotta imagine when you roll up, you're now you go competitors nearby around you. You're competing with. All of a sudden, you guys are all on the same team.
Right.
It's kind of like think about in sports, right? When you see these guys in free agency move around, or I'm thinking, when LeBron went to Miami, or Brady left, your Patriots went to Tampa.
Right.
Probably a little more personal for you there.
Yeah.
But when you start working with competitors now on the same team, what was that experience like?
It was different. Some people embraced it. If you looked at my partner and I were 38 years old at the time, and we sold the company for all stock. So I don't think I could do that at this point in my life. But at 38, you could afford to take risk. And fortunately for us, the strike price was low at the time, and that move pretty much doubled the transaction had we taken cash. But
Yeah.
kind of look, you're all on the same team because you want the value of stock to continue to increase.
Yeah, your financial alignment.
Right. But there were still some. I'll never forget the guy in Philadelphia that delivered the daily racing form every day. Apparently, after they announced it, I just called to say hi and welcome him on board. And his first comment was, I can't do we deliver the daily racing form. We don't have any more drivers to help you out. So apparently other people had called and wanted him to help out with their Philadelphia deliveries. And I said, no, I just called to welcome you and say hi, believe it or not. But he was a guy that sold his company and didn't want to have anything to do with that maybe he sold for cash.
Yeah.
But I think everyone was of the same mindset and pulling the same direction.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've talked to a few people about the U.S. delivery story, and a little mixed reviews, but I think overall, I think people did benefit, or at least learned a lot about what it takes to be a publicly traded company and kind of go through some of the regulatory issues.
It was different. We could write a book with some of the stories on these closings and the personalities involved.
We should do that.
To answer your question from earlier, we weren't really looking to sell,
Yeah.
and the more we said no, it's like many things in life. The more we said no, the more interested they were in us. And we'd paid off the bank loan. The first time we were able to take some decent money, my partner and myself, we weren't really motivated by it, but they kept coming back. So that's what precipitated it.
Got it. All right, and getting back to Pro Courier, so at some point you leave U.S. Delivery Systems and then you get back into the owning now Pro Courier. What made that transition play out that way? Where I know U.S. Delivery went through different exits and ownership, so I'm not sure where you may have got off the train at.
So exactly a year after we closed that transaction, we were made aware, the former owners, now shareholders, were made aware of their desire to merge with Corporate Express. And Clayton invited us to his home in Houston for kind of a kumbaya moment with the chairman of Corporate Express. And the worst deliveries in our industry, in my opinion at the time, were these office deliveries where you had drivers taking 5-gallon jugs of water up 5 flights of stairs to an office and copy paper. It's just not what we did. I'm certainly not being condescending, but Clayton's story was that we were going to maintain and still operate as U.S. delivery, and that came through loud and clear at his home. We went to the other side of the room and spoke to Yurka and Bob King, and I remember this clearly. My partner and I were 5 minutes after we had heard something differently. Corporate Express said, plan on utilizing your locations to help us deliver the office supplies. For instance, in upstate New York, Rob Slack has these 5 or 6 facilities, and it's going to help us deliver our office, which he didn't want, and I didn't want. My partner didn't want.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I'm right on the same night, within 10 minutes, you're hearing completely different, made me a little bit uneasy. So I think at that time, fortunately, we had negotiated that if there were a change in control in the company, that we were able to leave. That wasn't the case with all former owners. Mm-hmm. So my partner said, well, what do you think? As we were driving back to the hotel that night, I said, I've made my mind up. I don't feel comfortable with what we just heard. So we exercised that change of control option. It was not popular. We were looked at as not team players, but in hindsight, it was probably one of the best moves we made.
Yeah. And so you started Pro Courier in 97?
Yes.
97. Okay.
Yeah.
And were there any non-competes you had to navigate through? That sit aside for a little while, kind of got back in?
Yeah. The agreement, as I recall, called for a 5-year non-compete. If we decided to leave U.S. delivery, you might as well find a new career. Or 1 year if there was a change of control. The change of control was brought to my attention by Rob Slack.
Okay.
I don't think we should have been talking to each other, but he said, listen, my lawyer brought up, we're happy selling to these guys in Houston, but what if they sell to someone else, And he put this clause in his agreement, which I'm so thankful for Rob to this day, rest his soul,
yes.
That they didn't like it, but we negotiated, and we found out later there were about 20 former owners that asked for that. That had the foresight. And
that was huge.
Otherwise, yeah, we would. So I did wait. I was on the sideline for about 18 months with planning, et cetera. And it wasn't a good 18 months for me because I was too young. And I remember traveling for the summer, and then the kids went back to school, and Sharon went back to work, and I'm sitting at like 39 years old. What am I going to do?
Yeah. So
I actually ended up volunteering for the state of Connecticut and the economic development department because I was truly going crazy at home. A friend from high school.
You don't strike because you can sit home too long.
No. So a friend of mine, John Rowland, was the governor at the time in Connecticut, and I worked for another friend, Jim Abramitis, who was a UConn alum and was in the department, and I worked with him on developing industry clusters, which was an initiative at the time. And it gave me something productive to do. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it didn't last very long, and by design. And I think everyone won. I was able to business and still be productive every day.
Yeah. All right. So, well, first, I appreciate you giving me all that history because that's part of why I love doing these podcasts is you learn so many things. And to the audience, it was a huge nugget if you didn't catch it. Another one we'll attribute to Rob Slack, who has done so much for this industry. But there's so many guys that I've known that have mentored me that probably had they not had claws.
Right.
Who knows if they'd still be around this industry? Because there's so many guys that jump back in after year's delivery. I never knew that history. So, again, salute to Rob Slack and rest in peace.
He did me a favor. He did me a lot of favors, but he didn't have to share it. Some people he shared it with didn't take his advice. One individual in Boston sold for all cash.
Yeah.
And regardless of change of control or not, which he asked for, he regretted not taking all stock because his deal would have at least doubled, in value.
Yeah.
So, but on the other side,
that's another episode about
right.
How,
it's another.
When you're exiting companies, stock versus cash. That might be a topic we come up. All right. So you mentioned that your friend was the governor of the state of Connecticut,
John Rowland.
Yeah,
yes.
at the time. You operate in some very litigious states when it comes to the proper use of independent contractor drivers. You're in Massachusetts, you're in New York, Jersey, Connecticut. Two-part question. One, have you had any bad experience, any horror stories that you can share, things that you've endured yourself, and then what lessons have come out of those in terms specific to how to best operate with the 1099 model in these markets?
So much the same on the national level that you've seen and been involved with as president of the association. Most legislators don't know what we do, and we've seen it in Washington, D.C. when we sit down and say, this is what we do. And you're not FedEx and you're not UPS. The light bulb goes off. In Connecticut, we had a very small but active association. We were able to craft language through the Department of Labor with a lot of effort that kind of carved out our industry from adverse rulings. In other words, independent contractors claiming that they're employees. And they found out that everyone that works as an independent contractor really wanted to be such. And we had what we thought was an ironclad declaratory ruling, with the state of Connecticut, we didn't spend a lot of money, and it held up for a good 15 years or so. So to answer the second part of your question is very satisfying to work hard with at the Capitol, get favorable language, very disheartening to have it taken away, which it was, without too much effort on their part.
Yeah.
And so right now, the state of affairs, at least in the state of Connecticut, is we're right back to where we were before the declaratory ruling.
Yeah.
So they took it away from us, and we haven't been able to get it back. But on the positive front, they haven't really been targeting our industry. So things are just quiet right now.
Yeah, that's a good thing. No news is good news,
Right,
when it comes to that.
That could change overnight, as we know.
It certainly can, which is why you have to always have your I's dotted, T's crossed when you're doing this work to understand how to best utilize this model the correct way.
Yeah, you can't educate enough, and you just never know when you need certain people. So I always make an effort to make myself known in the business, the current General Assembly and state senators. And I think those that are active in our association do the same.
Yeah, I learned it from guys like you. My dad has been actively involved, and as he says, I don't want to be a politician. I just want to be friends with the politicians.
Right.
That's what he tells me all the time.
Your father's an example of that one.
He has done that very well. All right, let's transition to a topic that I think comes up a lot in this industry, but it's hard to get people their minds around it. Profitability. So what sometimes I've been a part of companies that are some of them chasing the top line, right? You're just looking at the revenue and see how you get that number. Others are more focused on the bottom line, where the real profit is, the take home, as they will say. You've been a part of both types of organizations, I'm assuming, just with your experiences. And I know a little bit about Pro Courier, but you seem to have figured out how to maintain a healthy margin business. What do you attribute that to? And what advice would you have for other folks in this industry so how they can, achieve, a healthy margin? And what would you define a healthy margin in this industry?
So, I mean, we're probably, we operate low top line and high top line, but I think we've exceeded 30%. And it's so much more difficult to say no than yes. But I think how I got there wasn't my education in college. I think the Eastern Connection example was a good one. Well, we got to $5 billion, and it was a very profitable $5 million. We were probably using cargo vans and not trucks, and it was very simple. It was just Boston, Hartford, New York, Philadelphia, Washington. So it was on the ground, and we weren't flying. And we kind of competed with FedEx, but we didn't say replace FedEx, just give us New York. Everyone ships to New York. And there's an awful lot going back and forth the Northeast corridor. But we were very profitable at $5 million, less so at 10. And I remember clearly, once we hit 20 million, I think we were losing money some months. And it's because we added Albany, New York, and Providence, and Manchester, New Hampshire, and Wilmington, Delaware, all of which came with more revenue, but a lot more headaches. And I remember we hit the same profit margins at 25 million as we were at 5 million.
That's crazy.
And I said,
so the same.
I'm running.
Let me make sure I'm getting this right. The same net
dollar
amount
at 25 versus 5. Now, I'm not a genius, as you know, but I can do simple math, and I know what my life was like at 5 million, and I remember what it was like at 25 million, putting out fires everywhere and reacting, and trucks breaking down, and times 5.
Yeah.
So I said, boy, you can't go back in time, but $5 billion was a pretty good place for us in terms of profitability, and maybe we didn't have to add these cities, and we could have kept growing within our network.
Yeah.
So I think that's what stood out with me, and I remembered. So that was one. It was in the business plan with Connecticut Courier that the margins could only be a certain percentage, and our goal was to keep driver costs below 50%. And unfortunately, we had to say no to a lot of the garbage stuff that our competitors are saying yes to. But I think it worked out, and I've kind of taken mantra with Pro Courier for a long period of time. Yeah. So we're not for everyone.
What I love about that the most is it highlights when you focus, when you're, like I said, not afraid to say no, when you understand kind of who you are and who you want to be. I never told this story before, but 6 months before we sold QCS, it was one of these inflection points where I was like, we were probably about that same $5-6 million mark, and go here, or in my opinion, had to get out, had to exit. And there's a large company in Louisiana that was up for sale, $25 million top line revenue, and I wanted it. And I did my due diligence, and we found the exact same. What I realized, his net number, it was the same as my number.
Yes.
And I was like, now why the hell would I go spend $25 million to make the same amount of money I'm making at 5?
Right.
It didn't make sense. And I didn't know, all the details of why that was, but over my years, I've heard that more and more and more is that as you get bigger, that bottom line gets smaller. And I can know why guys keep chasing it. But you figured it out.
You do. Well, I don't know it all. Right when you think you know it all, you're in trouble. But I know quality of life in addition to earnings is important for me. And we all just want to strike the right.
Yeah.
You want to have time with your kids. And this business can swallow us up. And it has at different points in our career. But I think that's the right balance for us. And we confidently can deliver on time with quality drivers. And it's manageable. So that is what's worked for me.
Got it. So as we wrap up, got 2 last points I want to talk about before I let you out of here. You mentioned, relationships. I know your kids, a couple of your sons are involved in the business. Talk about what it's like to work with your children who have kind of benefited from this life that you created for them, and now they're. It's kind of succession planning, right? I think that's one topic that you see kind of some of the older statesmen in the industry at a point where they're looking to exit. How have you looked at succession planning with your children and involved in the business?
Yeah, it's not easy working with family, because it's not many of our friends, and those that have family businesses, you have to set the ground rules in advance, and sometimes it gets a little bit uneasy. But unfortunately, I have 3 children. My youngest, Allie, lives in Cape Cod, and she works for Cape Cod Healthcare and has never been near the business, and she wants it that way. Both my sons are going to high school, and I'm guessing you did at QCS as well, or dispatchers or drivers or touching the business part-time and involved. My son, Mike, has a career as a podcaster now, but Mike has worked inside at the office. He has done everything from dispatching to driving to everything. Tyler was an accounting major at University of San Diego, worked for Deloitte Touche in Boston for 4 years or so, and decided that he'd like to come in full-time. And I think a lot of his accounting background kind of helps the business as well. I don't have a succession plan right now, which is not good. And Tyler lives in Southwest Florida now and has started a family, but he's able to manage his duty as Boston or Massachusetts-based sales rep from there. Yeah. He's a very good job with it, too. And Mike lives in Boston and puts a lot of time in with CBS, golf. CBS Sports is his passion. So he kind of dips in and dips out around his schedule with CBS.
Yeah.
So it's just not an easy answer, and it's something that's evolving. I'll come up with an answer at some point in time, but I don't have one right now.
Oh, you're not going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. No. Let's close out with kind of your thoughts on the future final mile. And if you can, the 2-part question, tie in, I like to get the guests' last or first moments. So there's no tie in there, but what first is your last or first moment? Like, so you've had all these different experiences. You've had some highs, some lows. What would you point to as kind of what's a pivotal moment for you, your career, whether it be professionally or personally?
I think it was giving up on the idea of a career that I had been trained for in school and thought I was going to work in for a long time. And looking back now, never working a day in the broadcast journalism industry. I was fortunate enough to meet people along the way. Jim Berluti was in the same school as me, and you never know how these relationships are going to turn out. But he gave me the first opportunity. I think that, truth be told, as a sales rep, I was rough when I took that first position. I needed help, and I found help with Tom Hopkins was my salvation. But there's many people out there that teach you need to stop talking and start listening, start asking questions and making statements, to feel comfortable and really identifying what the problem was. And sometimes you can't solve the problem, Jason, and that's difficult too. But Tom Hopkins was beneficial to me in developing the technique, at crafting questions properly to predict answers in a positive manner. So I invest a lot of time in his education. I don't know where he is now, but for 10, 15 years, I made myself better. So I really think that when I started out as a sales rep in the industry, I was probably as bad as it gets. And fortunately, through a little bit of hard work, a little bit of luck, relationships, and just trying to be honest with people about capabilities that I don't consider myself first, but I consider myself lucky to have seen success.
Yeah, awesome. One of the things we didn't get to, which I forgot to, I got to get on camera for a quick second, is you offer this onboard courier service where I'm assuming you're taking packages around the world on a plane for clients. Explain that as succinctly as you can so the audience can understand kind of what this service entails. And I would imagine it's got to be a pretty profitable service line.
Yeah, the truth is it's not. If we see one every 2 months or so, it's probably high volume, but it makes for some good stories. We've had deliveries to Tokyo, Japan, and Zurich, Switzerland, and Buenos Aires, and I think it's at a point where company needs to know the assuredness of not having customs get in the way. A lot of them are international in scope. Price doesn't matter. The one I did on my own, everyone else said no. This is a good service that all employees say, listen, onboard courier job, I'd like an opportunity. So we got one for Beijing, China. Mike's a printer in Connecticut, Finley Printing, and it was for General Motors. When brochures it was a presentation to the Chinese government to build 5 plants throughout China manufacturing vehicles. The printer made an error, either the ad agency or the printer made an error where the Chinese in this presentation turned out to be curse words. And they found out about it 2 days before the presentation. So they needed someone to board the aircraft, deliver these 2 boxes of printed matter in Beijing.
To swap out.
So, I don't know what the value of that was, but, I remember the airfare at the last minute was something like $15,000, and we charged a lot for the delivery, but it probably could have charged anything. Yeah. And usually that's the situation. The Zurich one involved final approval for a drug for a Connecticut-based pharmaceutical company. So
you're basically taking a package and you're keeping it with you.
It never leaves the possession of the driver.
Never leaves the possession. And so you go
can't even check it.
Fly to Beijing. I mean, you went to Beijing. I'm sure probably a little, you probably makes a little business and pleasure once you got there.
I would have liked to have stayed, but the truth is I flew to Beijing, stayed at the Holiday Inn in Lido in Beijing, spent one night, and turned around and flew back. So
I don't know if people that go to Beijing for one night.
It's awful. What an awful. So it was really 2 days there, but I went to the Hard Rock Cafe and had a hamburger. I was fortunate enough the recipient told me that the taxi driver had taken me a convoluted way, and she was Chinese but bilingual, and gave me advice on how to get back to the airport. But I would have liked to plan a 2-week vacation had I known I was going. Which was the difficulty finding an employee to do it.
Last minute. Well, Mike, I want to again thank you for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate all the insights, the stories, you sharing your experiences with me and our audience. And again, thank you for picking the phone up and calling me, 15 years ago, to kind of set me on a course where, like it's like you say, relationships, they are the fundamental key of success in life. And we've established a relationship. We talk about many things all the time. You text me a lot with different jokes, and sometimes I'll text you back, depending on the mood I'm in.
Once in a while. I don't take it personally.
But I appreciate the love, and thank you for what you've done for this industry, certainly our association, and continued success to you and the team at Pro Courier.
Thank you for saying yes to that invitation way back when. And you've helped me out as much as I've helped you. In your case, your father's helped me probably just as much. Appreciate everything you've done for the industry and for our
Mike. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jason Burns here. Last but first, we got Mike Gualtieri with Pro Courier. Thanks for being with us on this podcast today. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Thanks.